Views on the future of China are mixed. Many in the media and financial community talk of China overtaking the United States as an economy in the next decade and the possibility of the two countries forming a G2. Others are not so sure. One leading hedge fund manager watching the Shanghai stock market slump said China would be the black swan of the next 10 years. The Next Decade is the name of a new book just published by author and Stratfor founder Dr. George Friedman. What does he think?
China has done an extraordinary thing in the past 30 years. It has lifted several hundred million people from abject poverty. Unfortunately, it's left over 1 billion people in abject poverty. The basic numbers are 600 million Chinese live in households earning less than $3 a day. 440 million live in households earning less than $6 a day. So that means that over 1 billion Chinese live in extraordinary poverty. About 60 million earn over $20,000 a year. That's the ones we always think of when we think of China, and that's less than 5%. However rapidly China grows, it's not coping with this problem, which is the Achilles heel of China. And add to that, the Chinese can't sell to these people. You can't sell an iPod to somebody who lives in a house earning $3 a day. It's not going to happen. So the Chinese economy is hostage to the appetite of the United States and Europe for its exports. And the greatest threat to China is the American savings rate, which has gone up because out of every dollar that is not being spent at Walmart, that part of the dollar doesn't go to China. The Chinese are afraid of unemployment, so they've surged exports at lower and lower profit margins. And they have refinanced bad loans by lending even more money. They have money to lend, but like the United States in 1929 and Japan in 1990, having a lot of money means you can no longer invest it inside of China, so they're buying anything at almost any price that's outside of China. The same way the Japanese bought things outside of Japan when they were collapsing. So we are seeing China at the stage where it has to change the way it behaves. It can't sustain the growth rates it's sustained before, and the growth rates it's having really aren't a sign of economic health. The rate of return on capital isn't there. They're reaching a point where they have to redefine the way they work, the way that Korea and Taiwan did in '97, the way Japan did in 1990. It's taken them a long time to get to this point. They will certainly remain a significant world power, but the idea that they will continue to grow at 10–12% permanently is simply unsustainable. It can't be done.
Given this imbalance, what are the chances of unrest and political instability?
The question of unrest really depends on the ability of the Chinese Communist Party to maintain its security apparatus. One of the things we've seen in the past couple of years is a tremendous surge in repression in China. The Nobel Prize was given to a dissident, and the Chinese were quite bitter and angry about it. People have said that, well, China's going so well, it really is unfortunate that they are becoming more repressive. But clearly the Chinese government knows better, and they know that they're not doing nearly as well as outsiders think, and they're going to be more repressive. Can this succeed? That really is the question mark of this next decade. Can the Chinese succeed in repressing dissent and keeping the country from splitting apart? But in either case, from a global point of view, China will not be the engine it was. It can't be. It is not going to drive for another 30 years what it did in the past 30 years. And so I think what we're going to see here is whether or not China fragments, a very different China.
Meantime, we've had China's strong military buildup.
At this point, it hasn't become anything yet. The Chinese have not yet floated an aircraft carrier, let alone a carrier battle group. They have some fighters, and we just saw some indication of new generation fighters, but not the thousands that they need. A great deal of that money that's being spent on the People's Liberation Army, by the way, is not being spent on weapons to challenge the United States. It's being spent on internal security, on making certain that the People's Liberation Army remains loyal by paying them better, and also deploying them in other places in the country to secure the country. So when you look at that $90 billion, look at it not only as increasing defense spending, look at it in spending that money in internal security. And that's part of what I've been talking about, which is there is a security threat to Beijing, and Beijing is responding by being increasingly repressive.
And Dr. Friedman's book, The Next Decade, is published by Doubleday and available from good bookshops, or you can order it online at www.stratfor.com. Thanks for your time today. In the next and final part of our conversations together, we'll talk about George's conclusions for the next 10 years.